So again, hello everyone. Welcome to today's pre-departure orientation. My name is Kelly Wagner. I am a program manager at the International Center. And I'm gonna let my colleagues who are also presenting today introduce themselves. So Jake, if you wanna introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Jake Kelzer. I'm a program advisor on the Global Engagement and Education Abroad team of the International Center. Thanks for coming, it's nice to meet you all. Kelly Nelson.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Nelson. I'm a senior program manager on the Global Engagement and Education Abroad team in the International Center, and so happy you all could join us today.
Hi everybody, welcome. My name is Caitlin Loomis. I'm an international student and scholar advisor at the University of Michigan International Center.
Thank you everyone. And unfortunately, Tammy Wong cannot attend today because she's under the weather, but normally she would be here to meet you all and greet you and answer questions as well. Next slide. So just to give everyone a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. So we're going to talk about US culture and sort of connecting with campus. First, we'll have a small group activity. So we'll send you all into breakout rooms where you can meet other new students and get to know each other a little bit better. When we come back from the activity, we will discuss traveling and getting settled in Ann Arbor. We'll then talk a little bit about the hot topic I'm sure you all are waiting to hear, immigration information, as well as COVID-19 considerations. We'll also talk about the International Center International Student Orientation, and then we hopefully will have at least 10 minutes at the end for other general question and answer from you all. Next slide. Just a couple of housekeeping items. So please keep your microphone on mute unless you've been called upon to ask a question. We may also have you unmute during the activity, but just to make sure background noises aren't there, please just keep it on mute unless you're talking to everyone. Also, please address your questions in the chat box and keep those questions to the subject we are currently discussing. We're going to try to keep track of all the questions so that we can revisit them at the end or during particular subjects, but just to make sure nothing gets lost along the way, try to hold your question until we get to the subject that you have questions about. And then I know someone already asked this in the chat box, but will the presentation be recorded? Yes. So we are currently recording the presentation and we will be putting that on the website, hopefully by early next week. We will also email out a link to everyone who registered or attended and send that to you all to review later. We'll also send you the slide deck in a PDF format as well, so you can get the links and everything that we're talking about during the presentation. Additionally, closed captioning is available. And so if you need it, it will be there. So I'm enabling that right now. Next slide. So just to give you all a little bit more information about the International Center, the U of M International Center is the place you're going to go with all of your immigration concerns and everything else for the most part. If you are not aware, the University of Michigan has nearly 7,000 international students and scholars from 115 different countries. So we have a very diverse student population at U of M, and international students also make up about 13% of the overall student body. Our location is at 1500 Student Activities Building. SAB is what you'll hear. And so get used to the acronyms that are used at U of M. And so if you hear SAB, it means Student Activities Building. And there's the address as well in case you want to find us on a map so that when you arrive in the US, you can quickly head over and come see us if you have questions or need to drop off or pick up documents. You may have already emailed us at icenter@umich.edu, and we'll probably be putting that email address in the chat box a lot today. So if you have questions, that's the best way to get a hold of us. We currently are not open every single day, but we will officially be open 5 days a week starting in August. So make sure you go to our website just to double check when our office hours are, when we're closed, but we are always working remotely. So just something to keep in mind. In addition to immigration and health insurance, the International Center also has a variety of intercultural and social events that we host throughout the year. So it's a great way to meet other students on campus and make friends and learn more about other cultures. Additionally, if you are interested in studying abroad or doing an internship abroad in a country other than the US and going to a third study abroad location, we're a great place to start if you have questions about navigating the education abroad process or looking at programs not hosted by U of M. Next slide. And now we have a quick message from the director.
I'm Judith Pennywell, the director of the International Center at the University of Michigan. On behalf of the International Center and the Division of Student Life, welcome to the University of Michigan. We're really happy to have you join us this fall to begin your studies. It's an excellent institution of higher education, and you will definitely become the leaders and best that you're meant to be. Students, you'll learn more about the International Center and your immigration requirements, as well as how to adjust to Ann Arbor throughout this pre-departure orientation. But I want you to hear it from me that we're here to serve you. The IC is committed to helping UM's international population achieve its academic and professional goals through providing advice, advocacy, and programming on immigration and intercultural matters. Specifically, we work with students on F&J visas. We work with faculty, staff, and scholars on a variety of visas. And we work with our academic units and the medical center to make sure that the university, as well as you, can reach your goals. Our mission at the International Center is actually very simple. We're here to serve the international population, facilitate intercultural and international education, and to foster a global campus community. So I welcome you today. I hope that I wish you a lot of success really as you embark on your academic career, but also as you prepare to come to the US this summer. And I also want to be the first to say, go blue. I'm Judith Pennywell, the director of.
All right, thank you, Jake. And so just to get things started, we're going to talk about US culture and connecting with the U of M campus. Next slide. So if you haven't been to Michigan before, the image on the left is a map of the state. We are sometimes called the Great Lakes State. People might also refer to us as the Mitten State, because as you can see by the image, it kind of looks like the shape of a glove. Something to keep in mind is that natives from Michigan often will use their hand to point out where they grew up in the state. So as you'll see on the map on the left, Lansing is the star that's in the middle. And so people might raise their hand and say, oh, I'm from Lansing. So just to help give you an idea of where they're from in the state. So people are not crazy if they're doing that to you when you meet them on campus. It's just very normal to us. It just might seem weird to other people who aren't used to living here. The state of Michigan also connects to, well, it's not on the map that we have on here, but 4 of the 5 Great Lakes touch Michigan. So up to the north, on the top of the Upper Peninsula, where Marquette is Lake Superior. On the west side is Lake Michigan. On the east side is Lake Huron, and down to the southeast is Lake Erie. And so Michigan is a great place if you are interested in outdoor activities, if you like to swim, if you like to go to the beach. If you've never been to a Great Lake before, it feels very much like you're sitting at the ocean. And so I very much recommend that you all take the time to visit the Great Lakes while you are here. One thing about the state of Michigan is, unfortunately, we don't have a great train or bus system to get everywhere around the state. And so it can take, so say you wanted to go from Ann Arbor, which you'll see located on the southeast side of Michigan, all the way up to Marquette in the north, it could take around 8 hours to drive there. So it's a lot of land to cover if you're interested in traveling, but it's very beautiful and it's pretty easy to drive around the state. But unfortunately, we don't have a very good train and bus system to get everywhere. Detroit, located on the southeast side with the white dot, is the largest city in Michigan, and also where you're likely to fly into when you arrive. We'll talk about this a little bit later in terms of like how to get from Detroit to Ann Arbor, but it's usually about a 45-minute drive, but there's also bus transportation from Ann Arbor to Detroit if you are interested in visiting for the day. The image on the right is a map of the Ann Arbor campuses. And so the outer solid lines are the highway systems around Ann Arbor, but the boxes inside will show the different campuses within the U of M campus system. So we're not just one location There are several campuses within the U of M campus. To the south is South Campus, and that's where a lot of the sports facilities are located. So if you're going to a football game, a basketball game, attending a soccer game, things like that, a lot of those sports complexes are going to be in the South Campus. Central Campus is more of the urban campus. It's the main campus in downtown Ann Arbor. And so it's close to a lot of shops and restaurants, easy to walk around, and a little bit more urban feeling than say like North Campus. North Campus is about a 10-minute bus ride away. There are buses that you can quickly jump on and get to North Campus all throughout the day. And the North Campus is where a lot of the research facilities are, as well as like engineering, the School of Music, Theater, and Dance. So if you're in those programs, more of your classes may be on North Campus, but it's also a really beautiful campus. Lots of nature trails. You can see lots of squirrels or deer or other animals around. So just they all have their benefits. And there's also many other campuses too, which we won't really get into today, but like the Mathai Botanical Gardens, the campus farm, the medical center, things like that are also considered campuses, but the three main campuses that you'll be at most are probably South Campus, Central Campus, and North Campus. All of these are connected via the Blue Bus, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Next slide. So another thing about living in the Midwest, which is where Michigan is that we have 4 very distinct seasons in Michigan. And so you're going to feel all of these different seasons while living here, especially if you're here for more than a year. When you arrive, it will be summer. So hopefully it will still be warm and sunny. And so the picture on the top right would be, say, summer in Michigan. So the temperatures usually get from around 80 to 83 at the highest point of the day. And that's in Fahrenheit. So again, in the US, we use Fahrenheit, whereas most of the rest of the world will use Celsius. So again, just something to get used to before arrival. Fall will come quite quickly after you get to U of M. So fall is really beautiful. It's my favorite time of the year. The leaves change color. So it's really nice to see the oranges and reds and yellows of the leaves on campus. But at this point in time, you're probably going to want to make sure that you have a jacket. Dressing in layers is always something we recommend, because maybe at the end of the day, it'll be quite warm, but in the morning when you go to class, it's going to be cold and you might need a jacket. Winter can be quite an adjustment if you're not used to winter weather. So we highly recommend being mentally prepared for this. If you're not used to snow and cold and wind, it can be quite a transition for a lot of people. In the Midwest, we do frequently get snow and ice. So I highly recommend getting a good winter coat, good winter boots, things like that, just to be prepared. You don't need to have them before you arrive, because you'll have plenty of time to get them after getting to U of M. Spring is usually the rainiest season of all around Michigan. And so temperatures are usually vary from 45 degrees to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. This is when flowers and trees bloom. So also keep in mind too, if you have seasonal allergies and things like that, you might be sneezing, you might not love it, but it is also a great time of the year. Next slide. Also with Midwest culture, which we'll talk about this a lot at orientation and other times throughout the year. Midwesterners tend to be very friendly, but we like to keep our private life private. So don't be surprised if when you are meeting new classmates and other folks on campus who are from the Midwest, we might say hello, we might say, how are you doing? And then we won't ask you a lot of questions after that, because that's more of a standard greeting. But as we start to get to know people better, we'll ask more questions, we'll talk a little bit more and talk more about personal or private life type of information. So it just takes a little while to build that friendship over time. Some topics not to ask about until you know someone really well would be like their age, their weight, their sexual orientation, whether or not they're in a romantic relationship, even though it might be a hot topic right now, political views, maybe family income level. These are just things that are topics we tend to avoid until we get to know someone pretty well. Not saying never talk about these things. As I mentioned earlier, U of M is very diverse. So not only are you interacting with Midwest culture, but you'll have students who are from all over the United States as well as all over the world. So there's a lot of cultures going on all at once. So just something to keep in mind. What I'm saying about Midwestern culture won't be a rule for every US student that you meet when you get here. Another popular thing that folks in the US do, especially in the Midwest, are potlucks. So friends might invite you over and say, hey, do you want to come have dinner at my apartment? Usually the expectation is everyone brings one dish to pass. And so this is also a great opportunity to share your culture with other people, to make a dish maybe from your hometown or something that your family makes often, to share that with your new friends when you go over. People also, in residence halls, this might be a little bit different. A lot of times in residence halls, students might leave their doors open. It's not really uncommon to like knock and say hello when you get there or walk by. But if you're living in apartments or houses, people tend to want to have you be invited over. It's a little bit odd to just show up unannounced, because people might be busy, they might be studying, and so they don't want to have to be rude and say, I'm sorry, I can't hang out right now. So generally speaking, it's good to send a text or message your friends before showing up at their apartment or their house. Another thing about the Midwest is that you won't see pictures of food on menus. So this might be different from some cultures that you come from. And so when you go to a restaurant, there'll just be a small description of the item, and you won't have a picture to go off of. So if you don't know what a food item is, it might be handy to open, your Translate app and figure out what something is, or look up an item. I have to do that all the time. Also with a lot of places now too, there's like Chipotle and other restaurants where it might be you pick the type of item, then there's a line and you pick what you want to add on it. And so that can also be new for people if you're not used to that type of restaurant. Other things to keep in mind is just that the University of Michigan especially is very invested in diversity, equity, inclusion. So we'll talk more about this at orientation, but introducing each other using gender pronouns, asking about accessibility, other sorts of items like that are very common in the US to talk about those things. So that might just be a little bit different than where you're coming from. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned, U of M is a very diverse university, not only with international students coming, but also students from all over the country. And so this list of common challenges, I would not say is unique just to international students, maybe with the exception of the piece of understanding US immigration regulatory restrictions. A lot of students, this might be the first time they're away from home. They might be coming from the South or out on the West Coast or the East Coast. And so even the culture at U of M can be quite different. They might also feel homesickness. They're not going to have relatives or close family nearby. And so this can be challenging for all students, not just international students. But that's why we want to talk about it now, to let you know that like you're not the only one going through these things. So don't feel hesitant to talk about, your US friends when you meet them, especially if it's also their first time living away from home. But we also want to support international students with any language difficulties you might have. If you're not used to the style of learning that's used at the University of Michigan or like a US college institution, if there are things going on back in your home country that are very stressful to you or with your family, come to the International Center and we can help guide you to resources or talk with you and get you connected to places on campus that might be able to help you with a variety of these challenges. Next slide. So one of the cultural transitions that might be difficult for some students is US classroom expectations. Depending on what your high school or your undergraduate institution did, if you didn't study in the United States, it might seem very different. US classrooms at universities tend to be very relaxed. Students might even show up in their pajamas to class. They tend to be very technology friendly nowadays. So most students will probably bring a laptop with them and open it up and be taking notes on that. Although some professors may say, hey, I don't want you to do that. So double check if that's the case. Classrooms are also student centered. So other cultures may be more faculty centered, where the faculty is the person that the learning is about. But in the US, we want students to engage in the content. We want them to analyze it. We want them to use critical thinking and say, do I agree with this? Do I not agree with this? What parts are missing? What could be improved? What don't I know still? So don't be surprised if professors are going to ask you to express those opinions. They're going to call on you to share maybe what you think about it. And participation like that can even be part of your grade. So when you get your syllabus, take a look and make sure you understand if participation matters in your class. And what are the expectations that the faculty member has around participation? And when they're grading on participation, this is part of active learning. So again, in those in-class discussions and debates, you might have presentations, they might ask you to role play scenarios. You'll often have teamwork or team assignments, so group work to do where you're all graded on the same project, which might be brand new for some people. And also there's a variety of papers or things along the way that impact your final grade. And so we call it multi-pronged assessment. So some institutions just do one final exam at the end of the year, or maybe a midterm and a final exam, whereas in the US, it's very common to have exams, papers, assignments, and other group work that all add up to the total grade at the end of the year. Next slide. So other academic resources, U of M has a lot of libraries. So when you're doing your research assignments, when you are having problem finding the answer to questions on your homework, the library is a great place to go. Librarians can help find a variety of research or resources any point in time. I also recommend going to faculty office hours. If you are having difficulty with any of your subjects, faculty have office hours where you can just drop in and ask questions. And this can be really helpful because you might get a lot of one-on-one time with that faculty member to guide you through the content. Additionally, there are advising centers on campus. Every college has their own advising center. And so this is where you'll go to if you have questions about what classes to take, how to complete the requirements of your major or your program. And so if you have questions about that, advising centers are where you'll go. Additionally, if you want English language support, there are a variety of offices on campus that can help with that. Sweetland Writing Center can help with editing and giving feedback on written assignments. The English Language Institute offers courses for undergrad and graduate students around English language to help your continued education. And there's also the Language Resource Center where you can go to get additional resources as well. And they both offer conversation partners and conversation circle programs where you can meet with other international students or non-native English speaking students and a native English speaker and practice your English language skills together. Next slide. And additionally, clubs and student organizations are a great way to get involved and make new friends on campus. So we'll talk more about some other events in a bit, but Maze Pages is sort of the first step to go to find out if there is a club where you can meet new students. Some of these might be academic focused. So sometimes like business associations or environmental students might have a club where they all meet, but it could also be entirely hobbies or recreational. There's a squirrel feeding club on campus. There's like a knitting club, a board game club, and there's also cultural clubs. So the Chinese Student Scholars Association, the Korean Student Association, Indian Student Association. And so there's a ton of international student orgs as well, based on culture. Another group is the International Center Student Council. There's a picture of them on this slide from a couple of years ago. And that is another group if you're interested in improving the international student experience on campus and helping build that bridge between international and domestic students. Maybe your sophomore year, this might be a good program to get involved with. Next slide. And as I was getting to, Festival and Northfest are organization fairs that happen on the fall semester. So there's tables outside. You can walk up and talk to people in these student organizations. There's usually a lot of free items. They might be passing out food. They might be passing out t-shirts or buttons, pens, things like that. So it's a fun way to walk around, get to know other organizations on campus and see maybe what you might want to get involved with and ask questions with people live. So there's Festival, and then there's on Central Campus, and then Northfest is the same thing, but on North Campus. And then other events throughout the year will be listed on happenings at Michigan. So if any day you're bored and you're looking for something to do, go to Happening at Michigan. And there's probably at least a dozen events happening every single day on campus. So you can always find a way to entertain yourself. Next slide. Okay. Jake, turn it over to you.
So yeah, before we move on to the next section, we wanted to set some time aside for you all to get to know each other a little bit better. So what we're going to do in this activity is put you all into breakout groups in Zoom. So you'll be in much smaller groups, and you'll have a chance to talk to each other. And we have some prompts for you that will be helpful for, getting the conversation started. So we'd like you all to introduce each other, say your name, where you're from, what program you're pursuing at U of M, and if you've ever been to the US before. And then we'd like you to dive a little bit deeper into what you're most curious about, the culture and campus life in Ann Arbor, whether it's like social life, academic life, things like that. And we'd also, you're also welcome to discuss what you're hoping to first do when you get to campus once you arrive. And then what aspects of life in Ann Arbor are you most concerned about? Is it food, transportation, friends, sports, a Michigan winter, different things like that. So we'll give you around 20 minutes to talk with each other. So yeah, feel free to cover these prompts. And then if you have time left over, feel free to chat about anything else that's on your mind. So yeah, this time is mostly for you to get to know each other. And then we'll take a few minutes after to debrief about what you talked about and have a short little activity in connection to the debrief. So I guess with that said, we can put you all into breakout groups. All right, welcome back, everyone. Seems like pretty much everyone is now back in the big meeting. So hope your breakout rooms went really well. And yeah, you got a chance to meet some new incoming international students. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit more excited, maybe prepared and less nervous about your big next move to Ann Arbor. And kind of as a response to the breakout rooms you were just in, we have a short little debrief activity that I mentioned before. And I'd like you all to either scan the QR code that you see on your screen or go to menti.com and enter the code that you see on the screen, 66374319. And it will take you to something called a Mentimeter, which is just a website that will create a cloud of words. And we'd like you all, based off your conversations with each other, to let us know how you're feeling in either one word or maybe a short phrase. And then we will pull up that word cloud and see kind of what you all talked about. Yeah, thank you, Kelly, for sharing. So you can also go to menti.com that Kelly shared in the chat.
Great, Jake, and I'm happy to take over sharing screen now.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so here's the word cloud coming up. The biggest one, which is great, is excited. So glad so many of you are excited. I see a confident in there too. There is a nervous, which is, yeah, nervous, anxious, very understandable. Concerned about winters. I saw someone write, yeah, that I'm from Michigan and I'm always concerned about Michigan winters. So yeah, that's just how it is here. Let's see. I see eager, a little scared. Yeah. Sports is, yeah, a big one in US culture, especially U of M culture. As you can see in my screen, I have the football stadium in the back of me. Let's see. Someone says less nervous. That's good. That's what we were hoping. Hoping this activity would kind of lead to that. Passionate, inspired, let's go. So yeah, it seems like quite a few of you are very, very ready to, maybe you've been in your own country for quite some time, especially due to the pandemic, and are finally ready for travel and something new. And hopefully Ann Arbor and U of M will offer that for you. Public transport concerns. Yeah, that's something that concerns quite a few international students coming in, and luckily we'll talk about that, and we'll also have an orientation session later on in August, specifically about transport as well. So hopefully a lot of your concerns and worries will be answered either during this pre-departure orientation or in later orientation sessions from the International Center staff or some of your peers who are working with the International Center this summer. Okay, well, yeah, thanks everyone for participating. Hopefully it was helpful for you all to see what others are feeling, that some, share the same level of excitement or still share some concerns. So you know that you're not alone in this. A lot of students are going through the same type of thoughts as you. So, and hopefully you were able to, learn that face-to-face when you were chatting with each other in the breakout groups. So yeah, thanks again for participating. And now we'll move on to our next section of the presentation. Okay.
All right, so now it's my turn. So in this section, we are going to talk a little bit about traveling to and around Ann Arbor, as well as other important information about getting settled on campus for the fall 2021 term. And I saw, as Jake mentioned, somebody mentioned in the word cloud that they're feeling a little bit nervous about public transportation. So we are going to cover that in a little bit during my section of the pre-departure orientation. So next slide, Jake. So the first thing that I want to go over briefly is packing for Ann Arbor. So when thinking about what to pack for your journey to Ann Arbor, I just want to remind everyone that even though Ann Arbor is a relatively small city, there are a lot of retail stores where you can purchase a wide range of clothing, toiletries, school supplies, and household supplies available. So you don't necessarily have to pack every single thing that you're going to need for the year before you leave. In addition, of course, to all the stores that we have that you can visit physically, there are, of course, many places that you can order supplies from on the internet for delivery. So with that said, there are a few things that you should keep in mind when you are packing your bags for your journey to Ann Arbor. So this is probably obvious, but one of the most important things that you need to be sure to bring along with you is your identity and immigration related documents. And we'll talk a little bit more about what exactly that is during the immigration section of today's presentation. Related to clothing, so as my colleague Kelly was talking about when she was going over the weather in Ann Arbor, the temperature in Ann Arbor does tend to still be pretty summer-like when the academic year begins in September. However, the temperature in campus buildings can vary. So you might find that some buildings are air conditioned maybe more than you're used to. And because of that, you might want to have some warmer clothing like sweaters or maybe a light jacket available even when you arrive in September, because it might be a little bit chilly sometimes. School supplies, those are really widely available in Ann Arbor, both on campus and then also at some of the larger stores that are available, using public transportation. However, if you don't want to have to go out and get those right when you arrive in Ann Arbor, or if you have really specific things that you like, a certain type of pen or a certain type of notebook, then that could be something that you might want to bring with you. You'll definitely need some winter clothing when you're in Ann Arbor, including some of the supplies that are listed on the slide. But thankfully, the winter weather doesn't usually start until maybe late October, November. So you have some time to purchase those once you arrive. You don't need to have them with you immediately. I would say that winter clothing is available at really a wide range of price points in Ann Arbor and in the US, but it can sometimes be expensive. So if you have a winter coat that you really love at home, then it could be something that you might want to bring with you so that you don't have to worry about buying one once you arrive. Of course, you'll want to be sure to pack any personal supplies that you need, like glasses, contact lenses, and medications. If you're planning to bring any type of medication or supplement with you, please review the link on the slide from our University Health Service, which shares important considerations for bringing medications into the United States. It includes links to information about which medications are not allowed in the United States. So please look at that if you're planning to bring any sort of medications with you to make sure that you don't experience any issues at the border or have to, last minute leave behind really important medication. And lastly, we would encourage everyone to review the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's prohibited items list before packing, just to make sure that you're not accidentally bringing along something that is not allowed in the United States. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about arriving at the airport. So for those of you who maybe have not yet purchased the airfare and are wondering where to fly in, the nearest airport to Ann Arbor is the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, and the code for that airport is DTW. It's about 30-minute drive from the Detroit airport to the University of Michigan campus, and there are a few different ways that you can travel to Ann Arbor from DTW. So probably the most cost-efficient option is the Michigan Flyer. So this is a bus that travels between Ann Arbor and the Detroit airport. It costs $12 for one reserved ride and $15 to $17 if you don't have a reservation. So if you go to the Michigan Flyer website, you can take a look at the schedule and book a seat on the bus in advance. If you don't book a seat in advance, as you'll see, you have to pay a little bit more. And then you also run the risk of the bus potentially being full, and it might not have room for you during the time slot that you're hoping to be on it. So the downside to the Michigan Flyer is that it has a set schedule. So if your flight is running, 4 hours late or something like that, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if you do experience, a delayed flight, it might be the case that the bus is no longer running for the evening. And the other potential downfall is that the bus drops people off in downtown Ann Arbor, which is really close to Central Campus. But if you're living on North Campus, it's maybe a little less convenient. So it is a good option, a cost-effective option, but it might not be the best option for everyone. So take a look at it, take a look at the website to see if it's something that you would like to take advantage of. Ride shares such as Uber and Lyft are also available at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport. The prices, of course, vary depending on the timing and the demand. And it may or may not be cheaper than taking a good old-fashioned taxi cab, which is the next mode of transportation that I'll mention. So taxi cabs, they tend to be the most flexible option, but they're also usually the most expensive option. If you did not make plans for transportation in advance, you can follow the signs in the airport to ground transportation, and then you can find a taxi. I would recommend making sure that you have some cash on you if you're planning on taking a taxi cab, just in case maybe the credit card machine's not working, or if by chance you get into a cab that doesn't have a credit card machine. So if you are planning to take a cab, try to have cash on you just to avoid stress with paying. And next, you might find that maybe your own personal networks might be helpful for airport pickups. So sometimes international student organizations coordinate airport pickups for new students. And so to find out whether or not, an international student organization is offering this, you could reach out to them. So you can find contact information for many of the student organizations through the Maze pages, which is the link that I dropped into the chat earlier. It's the search engine for how to find student organizations on campus. You could also, try to reach out to the student organizations through their social media as well to see if they're organizing anything for students. And then lastly, we wanted to mention the Airbus. The Airbus is a bus that runs between U of M and the airport before and after U of M breaks, including the fall break, Thanksgiving break, winter break, and spring break. It's a service provided by the central student government. You will need to check back closer to the start of one of those breaks to view the bus schedule and make a reservation. So this option is not applicable to students arriving on campus in August. So it's only for the other breaks that we have at U of M. So we wanted you to know about it though, just so that in the future, if you're planning on traveling and will be coming back from the airport after one of the other breaks that Michigan offers, that you can look into that option because it tends to be really, really quite cheap, around $5 for one ride. Next, please. Okay, so now we're going to talk about public transportation, which I know is a concern for many folks. So while the public transportation in Ann Arbor doesn't compare to public transportation in larger areas such as London or Chicago or Shanghai, I think you'll find that it is pretty sufficient for a smaller city, especially in the US. Most students actually do not own a car at Michigan, and they get around Ann Arbor just fine using the bus system, or if they have a driver's license, maybe using short-term car rental services such as the Zip car. As mentioned in the previous slide, there are also rideshare services available in Ann Arbor. So sometimes students will take an Uber or a Lyft to get to the grocery store or other places that they want to go in Ann Arbor. So there are two kinds of buses that serve the U of M campus. So the first type of bus that I'm going to talk about are the U of M blue buses. And you'll see a picture of the blue bus on the top corner of the slide. So these buses are free, and you don't need to show any identification when you board the bus. These buses are operated by the University of Michigan, which is why they have our logo on the front. The buses connect the Central, North, Medical, and South campuses. So these are the buses that students take when, for example, they might live on Central Campus, but they have some courses on North Campus, or vice versa. So these buses are very popular, very often used, and they run really morning, day, and night. So it's a pretty frequent schedule. The second kind of buses that are important to know about are the city buses, which are called the Ride. So these buses are white, and as I mentioned, they're part of the Ann Arbor City Public Bus System. The buses are free to U of M students, faculty, and staff, which is a wonderful benefit. However, you do have to swipe your student ID, which is called an M card, when you get in. If you forget to bring your M card, then you do have to pay to use the bus, and a one-way fare is going to be $1.50. So make sure that you have your M card with you if you're planning on taking the bus. But again, if you don't, it's just $1.50 in order to ride it. And you're able, like from campus, from kind of the Central Campus area especially, you're able to take buses to reach a lot of the major retail stores on campus, including ones where you can get like household goods in order to get settled in your apartment or your dorm, and lots of grocery stores. So it's a really great way to get around Ann Arbor. Currently, the city buses are running on somewhat reduced routes due to COVID, but they will be resuming their full schedule starting on August 29th, 2021. So they will be running at full capacity by the time school starts. Cycling is another popular way to get around campus in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor has a number of bike lanes that are protected from the street and different pathways for cyclists to take. So this is a really popular option, but if you're thinking about it, I do want to encourage you or to remind you that cycling is less common during the winter months. So it might not be the best mode of transportation for you to plan to use year round. So during the winter, the roads tend to be slushy and icy and snow covered. And so those aren't the best conditions for biking. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about having a bike. And then lastly, when you arrive, you'll probably notice that there are Spin brand scooters that are parked on the sidewalks in and around campus. So to use these scooters, you have to download the Spin app and then add money to it. And then you're able to like basically scan your phone on the scooter, and then you can take that around campus too. I think that that's increasingly getting more popular among students when they're going maybe between classes and need to get there faster than walking. And then we know some of you are probably interested in driving when you arrive in Ann Arbor, and that is of course an option, although parking around campus can really be a challenge and can be expensive too, depending on where you live. We will be talking about driving options, including, things that you need to know about driving in the US, buying a car, getting a driver's license. All that stuff is going to be covered during our August orientation. So we're not going to get into it now because this is just stuff that you need to know before coming to Ann Arbor. But in August, we will definitely talk about that a bit more. Next slide, please. Now, one other, I think, hot topic that people often have a lot of questions about is housing. So the next couple of slides, I'm just going to talk briefly about on-campus housing and off-campus housing. So on-campus housing, as you might expect, refers to university-owned housing. So there are different on-campus housing options available for undergraduate students and graduate students. It is optional for students to live on campus. However, if you are an undergraduate student, especially first or second year student, it really provides a unique campus experience through which I think a lot of students meet their lifelong friends. And according to the Michigan Housing Office, nearly 97% of first-year undergraduate students live on on-campus housing. So for undergraduates, especially, it's a really common and popular option, but there are also options for graduate students. So on this slide, we listed a few different considerations for undergrads and graduate housing. So for most undergraduate students, on-campus housing is referring to residence halls, of which there are many on both North Campus, Central Campus, and there's also like one on South Campus. For graduate students, when I talk about on-campus housing, I'm referring to like the Law Quad for law students, the Munger Graduate Residences on Central Campus, and the Northwood Apartments on North Campus. So if you click on the Apply Here link, you can learn a little bit more about housing options that are available to you. As with all housing, just make sure that you read through the housing policies very carefully and you have a really good understanding of the lease start and end dates, because it does vary by residence. Even within U of M housing, the start and end dates for housing or for the leases do vary. So be sure you have a good understanding of that. We wanted to mention that for undergrads who will be living in a residence hall on campus, it is important to note that the residence halls do close during the winter break, which is the break between the semesters, as well as the summer break. This means that you're not able to stay in the residence halls during that time. So if you're planning to be here in late December, early January, while the residence hall is closed, and you're living in a dorm or a residence hall, you can talk to the housing office about the options that they have for students. So they do arrange for special housing for especially international students who will be staying in Ann Arbor when the residence hall is closed. It's for a fee, but they do help make arrangements. So that's something that you can contact the housing office about if you think you're going to need it in the future. And then the last thing I want to say on this slide is that all of the on-campus housing is managed by the University of Michigan Housing Office. So if you have any questions about housing, say, for example, you applied for housing and you haven't heard back and you're wondering what the status is, those are all questions that you'll have to ask the housing office. So we in the International Center are not involved with the logistics or the details of the housing. So that's something that you'll need to contact the housing office about. But they're the ones that manage all of those processes and details. So, and I'll ask maybe one of my colleagues to drop the housing email address in the chat too. It's also on the slide, but housing@umich.edu is how you will reach out to folks in the housing office. All right, next slide. I want to talk a little bit about off-campus housing because this is another popular option. So off-campus housing refers to apartments, room rentals, and housing rentals that are not managed by the University of Michigan. So there are several ways to go about finding off-campus housing, including the U of M off-campus housing website and websites like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, as well as, again, your personal network or maybe through student organizations if you've connected with one of them. We want to make everyone aware that next Tuesday on July 13th from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, there's going to be a U of M off-campus virtual housing fair. And so we have a link, the registration link is on the slide, but that's a way that you can learn a little bit more about off-campus housing that is still near to the University of Michigan. And these apartment complexes really want to have U of M students live in them. And so they have they'll be presenting information about their options to people during that time. So if you're still looking for housing, would definitely recommend attending that fair. A few things to consider about off-campus rentals is that some buildings will be older than others. So some off-campus housing is, really old homes that haven't been renovated in a while. And then there are also really nice high rises that were, just built last year. So it varies. Something else to consider is that not all apartments or houses will have laundry machines. So if that's something that's important to you, make sure you confirm that there is like a washer and dryer in the house that you're looking at. Some off-campus houses offer amenities while others do not. So you might find that some apartment complexes have pools and a gym and a clubhouse, whereas others do not. So you'll have to weigh whether or not those are something important to you. Utilities are often not included in the rent in the US, but this does vary. So it's another reason to look at the details for any house or apartment that you're looking into. But by utilities, I'm referring to things like electricity, gas, and internet. And then I would say that the majority of off-campus housing options also are unfurnished unless otherwise specified. So this means that if you move into one, you will have to find or to purchase your own furniture like bed and couch and things like that. Please be aware that apartments in the US usually do not come with items such as a shower curtain. So when you move in, your bathroom is likely not to have a shower curtain. And this can be really different than the shower systems worldwide, where there's just a drain in the bathroom floor for water. So most US bathrooms only have a drain in the sink and in the tub. So you'll have to make sure that the water stays off the bathroom floor to prevent water damage. And before signing a lease, you'll notice a trend here, but be sure to read through it really, really carefully. The university also has a student legal services office that can review it for you and with you if you have questions or concerns. Pay close attention to the details of the lease, including the duration, as well as the cost of the security deposit. Because once you sign that lease, you are responsible to pay your rent monthly throughout the duration of your lease. So if you have a full year lease, all 12 months, but you're planning to leave Ann Arbor during the summer break, you'll be responsible for the rent during the summer, unless you look into options such as subleasing, which is where you would allow someone else to live in your apartment for the period of time that you won't be there. Every landlord has different policies around subleasing. So if this is something that you think that you're probably going to want to do next summer, then you should look into that and see whether or not it's possible before you sign the lease. And again, you can always check with Student Legal Services Office if you have questions about subleasing. And then lastly, please be aware of rental scams, such as maybe requests for you to wire money. Rental scams are really common, especially on websites such as Craigslist. So on this slide, we have a rental scam website that includes more example scenarios. So you can get a sense for what these scams might look like. So if something seems too good to be true, it's always good practice to wonder, is this actually legit? And look into it a little bit further. And if you are going to be signing a lease from abroad and you can't see the apartment or the house in person before signing the lease, it's totally acceptable to ask the landlord or whoever you're communicating with to maybe walk you through the house using like a virtual like FaceTime or something like that, so that you can see it at least virtually before signing the lease. And next slide. So another thing that folks are sometimes wondering about is dining halls. So the university offers dining halls all around campus. So there's dining halls on North Campus and more than one on Central Campus. So these dining halls are able to accommodate a wide range of dietary needs, including kosher, vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, and halal. For fall 2021, there are going to be options for in-person, so you can eat at the dining hall with friends, or you can take it away if you'd feel more comfortable doing that. Those of you who are living off campus might be wondering, can I take advantage of dining halls? Yes, you can. So students living in off-campus apartments and even staff and faculty can purchase meal plans in order to go to the dining hall. So that is possible. And as always, if you have detailed questions about where the dining halls are and what type of food they tend to have, you can click on or visit the M Dining website. During the academic year, they put the menus up on the website so you can get a sense for what will be served at the dining halls at any given day. The M Dining website also links to where there are like small markets and cafes on campus that are university owned, where you can also grab maybe a quick lunch or a snack in between classes. Next slide. So banking is something else that you will need to think about when you arrive in Ann Arbor. So regarding banking, you can set up a local bank account in the US as an international student. So the bank that you choose is really your personal choice. As a University of Michigan student, you will probably get information or see information about the PNC Bank, which is officially affiliated with the University of Michigan. And basically what this means is that if you open up a PNC bank account, then you can choose to use your M card, so your student ID, as your debit card. So if you want that convenience of having your bank card and your student ID as one card, then you might want to look into PNC. There are also PNC branches that are really convenient and close to campus. But Ann Arbor also has many other national, local, and international banks. So you certainly do not have to choose PNC. And we, would recommend thinking about going with a bank that is convenient for you. And maybe that means that the bank has an ATM machine that's close to your apartment. Or another thing you could look into is whether or not any of the banks in Ann Arbor have a partnership with maybe a bank that you use back home. That might make things simpler for you too. So those are some just kind of considerations to think about when looking into banking. Once you open up a bank account at whichever bank you choose to use, we definitely recommend setting up online banking so that you don't need to physically visit the bank as often. Also, if you end up getting a job on campus, you'll be able to set up direct deposit so that your paycheck will go directly into your bank account and you won't have to worry about physical checks. Also want to let everyone know that if by chance you choose a bank and you don't like it, it's not working for you, you can always switch. So this isn't a final decision that needs to be made in August when you arrive. And then finally, I just want to mention that these slides do have links that could be interesting to you. The International Center's banking website lists information about the steps that you'll need to take in order to open up a bank account, including the documents that you'll need to show. And then there's also a link to a bank comparison chart so you can see which banks exist in Ann Arbor. And then we will be covering banking in a couple of sessions that will take place during orientation in August as well. So you'll get to hear about banking from the student perspective. And then we hope that folks from the PNC Bank will share information about banking in the US as well. So you'll have more information about banking presented later on. And then speaking of finances, I wanted to talk briefly about paying fees and tuition. Next slide, please. So tuition for the fall 2021 term is due on August 31st, 2021. And your bill for tuition and fees can be found in Wolverine Access if you haven't already gotten an email about it. So you can go to Wolverine Access, click on Student Center, click on account inquiry and then finances, and then you'll see your student account and how much you owe for tuition. International payments are accepted through a service called Flywire. So the link on the slide offers full details about how this system works. So step-by-step information about how to use Flywire to pay your University of Michigan tuition. So if any of you are wondering how to pay using, international bank accounts, that's a really great option and we would recommend looking into it. It's also possible to sign up for a payment plan, which would allow you to divide up your tuition payment for the semester over the course of a few months. So enrollment in the payment plan is now open. So the enrollment you can enroll basically up until September 1st. And that way you can break up the payments into a few chunks instead of paying the full tuition payment in one big chunk. And if you are hoping to have your parents or your family members have access to your student financial account or pay bills on your behalf, you will need to complete a brief parents and family authorization process. Otherwise, family members will not have access to this information and will not be able to pay your bills for you. So be sure to look into that if that is something that you are going to be doing. And then lastly, we wanted to share that the University of Michigan now offers tuition refund insurance, which protects against financial loss in case you have to withdraw from the university due to illness or injury, including both physical or mental health. And you can learn more about that by clicking on the link in this slide. Next slide, please. So safety, Ann Arbor is a fairly safe city with many security systems that work to protect the student body. So U of M has its own Division of Public Safety and Security, which we refer to as DPSS, which includes police officers that work closely to ensure that you're safe on campus. However, as we all know, no place in the world is 100% safe. So we recommend, of course, always locking your doors and avoid walking around, alone late at night when it's dark outside. U of M emergency alerts are an urgent mass notification system that keeps the university community informed whenever there is a major active emergency on campus. This system will be activated without delay by our public safety department if there is a major emergency impacting campus. And you can sign up for the voice and text alerts through Wolverine Access. We also recommend that you save the DPSS phone number in your cell phone in case you need it, and that's the 734 number that's on this slide. If you don't have your cell phone available, around campus, there are blue light phones where if you're experiencing an emergency, you can walk up and press the button and be connected to public safety right away. And you can see a picture of one of these blue light phones on the slide. And then, of course, if you encounter a life-threatening emergency event, you should call 911 immediately. And the last thing I want to cover before passing it along to my colleague, Caitlin, is health and wellness. So the University of Michigan offers a wide range of health and wellness services for students. The first office that I want to talk about is the University Health Service, which we also refer to as UHS. UHS offers comprehensive physical health services, which are either free or offered at low cost for students. UHS is also able to refer students to Michigan Medicine, which is the university hospital, which is regularly ranked as one of the best hospital systems in the United States. So, and it's really close by as well. It's accessible via the Blue Bus. Related to this, there were a couple of questions submitted prior to today's presentation asking about which immunizations are required for U of M students. So immunizations are not required by the US government or the university with one exception. So students that are choosing to live in Ann Arbor on campus housing during the fall 2021 term will be required to be fully vaccinated for COVID-19 and to have shared proof of their vaccination with the university unless they have a documented exception. So we'll talk more about this in the next segment of today's presentation. And then moving along, individual and group counseling is also available to students on campus through the Counseling and Psychological Services Office, which we refer to as CAPS. This is a great office to visit if you're feeling stressed and you want to talk to someone about things like stress management or a wide range of mental health related concerns. And lastly, there are a lot of recreational activities available for students on campus, including access to campus gyms. There's a campus gym on North Campus, on South Campus, and on Central Campus. There are group fitness classes for students and intramural and club sports. So if you are someone that is into sports, I would say intramural sports are a really popular way to not only be healthy and get active, but also a really good way to make friends. So. And that concludes my section. I'm now going to transition to my colleague, Caitlin, who will talk to us a little bit more about COVID-19 considerations and immigration.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm going to speak about COVID-19 considerations and common questions, and then I will also cover a fair amount of general immigration information. Go ahead, switch the slide for me, Jake. Thanks. So as you all know, the global COVID-19 situation is dynamic and is quickly changing. So the best place to learn about the most recent COVID-19 policies on U of M's campus is the Maze and Blueprint website. This is where the University of Michigan is going to list all COVID-related news and updates. Also, the president of the university posts weekly updates here. Plus, there's also a very thorough FAQ, so frequently asked questions on this website. Things like, what will the fall be like? What will the fall term be like? Who is going to be required to wear face coverings? Where are face coverings required? How do I get a vaccine? Things like that. So if you do have any specific related questions to COVID-19, the Campus Maze and Blueprint is definitely the best place to start and the best place to find your answers. I do want to let you know that the University of Michigan strongly encourages all individuals on campus to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. The University of Michigan strongly encourages all students on campus to have all of their vaccines. But like Kelly mentioned, the only requirement is that if you are a U of M student choosing to live in the Michigan residence halls on campus, you will have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and share evidence of that with housing. Just for your own safety and because of traveling, we do encourage international students to get their COVID vaccine in their home countries. But if that's not possible for you, or if you prefer to get vaccinated in the US, you are eligible to get a free COVID-19 vaccination once you arrive on campus. Next slide, please. So health insurance. All F and J1 students at the University of Michigan are required to have health insurance. Healthcare in the US is very good, but it's also very, very expensive. So for example, if you had no health insurance and you broke your leg, if you got an x-ray and a cast and crutches, the cost for that in the US would be between $2,000 and $7,000. If that broken leg required surgery or physical therapy, it could cost all the way up to $35,000. Health insurance or health care in the US is really expensive. So the health insurance is going to help protect you from these high costs and then also help you stay healthy while you're living in the US. A few really important pieces to know about your health insurance is that based on your I-20 or DS 2019 dates, you are automatically enrolled in the International Student Health Insurance Plan. I'm going to say that again. Based on your I-20 and DS 2019 dates, you are automatically enrolled in the International Student Health Insurance Plan. You're going to receive monthly bills for that insurance on your Wolverine Access account. So the same place where your tuition and fees are posted, your health insurance fee will be there as well. Health insurance coverage in the US can be confusing. It's confusing for me and I live here. So I do suggest that you review the useful links and information that are attached to this slide to learn a lot more details. We will also host health insurance orientation sessions after you arrive. And also, the International Center has a full-time health insurance coordinator, and her only job is to help international students navigate the health insurance system and navigate healthcare in the US. The health insurance plan that you're automatically enrolled in has limited dental coverage, so limited care for your teeth, but if you choose, you can add more. I also want to highlight that the International Student Health Insurance Plan works all across the US and it works worldwide. So if you are traveling while you're a student, or you take a trip out of state, or you take a trip out of country, the health insurance plan that you're going to be enrolled in does work worldwide. For students that are a GSI or GSRA, or perhaps a student that is on a fellowship from their academic unit, you may receive health insurance coverage as part of that contract. That health insurance is called Grad Care, and your specific department or graduate coordinator will be able to answer your questions and give you all the details about health insurance through Grad Care. Next slide, please. All right, immigration. Your visa. So the visa is the F1 or J1 sticker that's placed in your passport from the US Embassy or consulate in your home country. It's also sometimes called a visa stamp, but that visa is required for your travel to the US. To obtain the F1 visa, you first have to receive your I-20 or DS 2019. You would then pay the CVIS I-901 fee and then apply for the visa, usually by making an appointment at the US consulate or embassy in your home country. And I'm going to talk about the visa process in detail. I know it's a really big point of concern and stress for a lot of you right now. Next slide, please. So I encourage you to apply for your visa sticker as early as possible. Visa processing times may take longer than normal because of COVID-19. And right now, visa appointments might be very difficult to schedule, or they frequently get canceled and you need to reschedule them. The reason for this is when COVID-19 hit in early 2020, a whole bunch of the consular officers in consulates and embassies around the world were actually recalled back to the United States. Just now, they are starting to be spread out again. So that means embassies are understaffed and just starting to get staff back. And there's a big backlog of visa applicants because of everybody that tried to come in 2020 and then tried to come in early 2021 and now is trying to come in fall 2021. So it is a very complicated situation, and we are very aware of this and following it closely. I can tell you that students that are within 60 days of their I-20 program start date, many embassies are allowing them to request an expedited appointment or an emergency appointment. So if you are within 60 days of your I-20 program start date and you're really having trouble getting a visa appointment, I suggest you do try to qualify or request an expedited appointment based off of that short timeline. During that visa application and that visa appointment, I really encourage you to be prepared to demonstrate that your intent is to return to your home country after your academic program. F1 and J1 are non-immigrant intent visas. That means you're coming to the US for a very specific reason, for a very specific length of time, and then the plan is that you go back to your home country. The embassy really wants to see that you have ties to your home country. So you need to prove that you have ties to your home country and want to come back to your home country after your studies. So some examples of this could be family ties, or links to property or wealth or financial stability back in your home countries. Those are the things that the consular officer is going to want to see. Our website does have specific support and tips, And I really encourage you to review these before your visa appointment. As I said, we are really aware that it's difficult for students to get visas right now. We're following the situation closely, and we're also advocating for our students through our various government contacts, our various government channels, and through other professional advocacy systems. So know that there is a lot going on behind the scenes, but we are here to support you, and we are doing everything we can to advocate for you and help get those consulates back open and fully staffed to process your visas. But visa issuance is at the full discretion of the consular officer who's adjudicating your request. So the University of Michigan has no direct influence over those cases or the decision that's made. If you do experience severe delays in your visa application or a visa denial, we do have a visa assistance web form. You can click on it on the slide. And that allows us just to be well informed of your case and help track your situation. Next slide, please. So preparing for your arrival. After you arrive in the US, you should check your I-94 arrival information. You can do that online. You can even do it from your smartphone at the airport once you arrive. But make sure that once you're on US soil, your I-94 should show that you were admitted in F1 status or in J1 status. It's really important to make sure that when you got to the US port of entry, they did everything properly and you're ready to be an F1 or J1 student on US soil. After you arrive in the US, you have to complete the mandatory immigration check-in process. We will email you complete details about this closer to the fall term. And most of these check-ins will be online. But the government requires that after you come to the US, you check in with the international office, that's us, and that we officially update your SEVIS record to show that you are here and that you are in F1 or J1 status. So once again, that is mandatory, but full details will be emailed to you closer to the term. I also suggest that you have transportation arrangements arranged in advance to get from the airport to campus, just like Kelly previously mentioned. It's just one less thing to worry about and helps make your transition and arrival a lot smoother, especially with jet lag and all the other things you're going to have to be dealing with. The International Center does host international student orientation workshops, and I really encourage all of you to participate. We have peer-led Q&A sessions and workshops. We will be hosting an in-person welcome desk. We have current students that have blogs and YouTube videos in place just to help you with your transition and answer all of your frequently asked questions. Kelly will also discuss orientation in a greater detail in the next session. Next slide, please. I do suggest that you make arrangements to transfer money to the US and open a bank account in the US. And kind of having a system or a plan in place prior to your arrival can help make this smoother. If you are carrying money into the US, remember that any combination of money more than 10,000 US dollars has to be declared to Customs and Border Patrol. You're allowed to do it, but you have to declare it to CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, upon your admission. And that $10,000 can be any combination of money orders, traveler's checks, and cash. And then finally, make sure that you have a place to stay. So if you're arriving on campus before your dorm or your apartment is available, you may need to make reservations for temporary housing or for a hotel so that once you do arrive, you know you have a safe and comfortable spot to sleep that night. Next slide, please. So once you're in the US, you must maintain your F or J1 immigration status. You all are working so hard to be admitted into U of M and to get your visa, and all the stress to travel and arrive to the US during a global pandemic. Once you're here, please be mindful to maintain and keep that F1 or J1 status safe. So federal immigration law requires that all F and J students do certain things. So as an international student and scholar advisor, my job is to help make sure that all of our students know these rules and follow these rules. And then I also maintain your CVIS records so that we can let the government know that you are following all these policies. There are 8 of us on staff as international student advisors, and we're here to help you through all of this. But I do want you to have a general overview of the main immigration laws that you're going to have to navigate once you arrive on campus and you hold F or J status on US soil. The first thing to remember is that F1 and J1 is a student status. So to keep your F and J1 active, you also have to maintain good academic standing, make normal progress towards your degree requirements, and be enrolled full-time every fall and winter term. Spring summer is optional, so you may enroll in spring summer if you choose, but you never have to. But enrollment during the fall and winter terms is required per federal law. Full-time for undergraduates is described as 12 credit hours. For graduate students, full-time is 8. And for graduate students who have full-time GSI or GSRA appointments, full-time is 6 credit hours. This fall and fall term, because of the global pandemic, SEVP, the Student Exchange Visitor Program that oversees F and J visas, has allowed students to be in a lot of remote classes if necessary, so online classes. But if you're coming to the US, you have to be in at least one class that meets in person or has a hybrid in-person online component. So at least one of your classes, and it should be 3 credits, is an in-person or hybrid course for the fall term. You also need to make sure that you always have a valid passport in your possession and that your I-20 or DS 2019 does not expire. Right now, the end date printed on your I-20 and DS 2019 is an estimate of your degree completion that may change, right? You may graduate a little earlier, you may graduate a little later. That's totally fine, but you would need to keep the International Center updated on those changes so that we can make sure your immigration documents properly reflect what you're actually doing. Remember, as we already discussed, F and J students must maintain and have health insurance coverage. And also employment. This is a big question that lots of incoming students have questions about. So F and J are student visas. That means while you're here, being a student is your main goal. But there are some options for employment. You are allowed to work on campus up to 20 hours per week while school is in session. So once you arrive here in fall, if you want to search for an on-campus job and work up to 20 hours per week on campus, that's totally allowed. During official school holidays and breaks, such as like the summer period, you can actually work on campus full-time. And complete information and more details about work authorization and F and J status is available on our website. And we also host several orientation sessions going through those topics in detail. For any student that wants to work off of campus, so working off of U of M's campus, it does require pre-approval and very specific approval. Once again, that information is on our website and covered during other orientation sessions once you arrive. But just be aware that if you are interested in pursuing any opportunity off of campus, make sure you do your research first to make sure that you have the proper authorization in place in order to do that. Unauthorized employment in F and J status can actually lead to termination of your record and you would be forced to leave the US. So it's really important that you understand what you're allowed to do within a student visa and follow those rules closely. And remember, myself and the whole immigration team at the International Center are here to help you through that. We're here to help you with all of those immigration related questions and concerns. Next slide. So our website does have a frequently asked question for newly admitted students, particularly focused on the fall 2021 term and the unique situation surrounding it. So I do suggest that you carefully review that website. It has a lot of helpful and important information designed specifically to serve you and help make your transition to campus for fall 2021 as smooth as possible, even though we are in a global pandemic. All right, Kelly's, that's what I have.
All right, so I'm actually next, and I'm going to briefly discuss our International Center orientation, which is, it's a period of time where our office will offer different types of sessions and events and like activities for incoming international students throughout August. So I'll get into it now and tell you a little bit more about it. Okay. So this summer, the International Center Summer Orientation will be virtual. It is not mandatory, but we do highly recommend that you all attend because there is a lot of useful information. We saw that many of you asked questions about for this PDO about things you need to do or consider before arriving in Ann Arbor or after arriving in Ann Arbor. And many answers to those questions will be covered during our summer orientation. For example, we have these workshops called peer-to-peer workshops, and there will be sessions that cover practical needs like driving rules in the US, legal issues that you might not be aware of, and ones that could be different than from your home country, such as, signing a lease or the legal drinking age being different in the US and your home country, things like that. We'll also have sessions about academic support, such as learning about cultural differences in a US classroom and how to communicate effectively with your academic advisors. There will be sessions on health and wellness, such as managing stress, adjusting to life in the US, making friends with Americans as well as other international students. And then there will be sessions focused around employment. So how to find a job on campus, and we'll cover the regulatory requirements, like where you can work and how many hours per week you can work as an international student. So those are our peer-to-peer workshops. We'll also have Ask Me Q&A sessions, these will be in August as well. And these are sessions that aim to support new international students and answer any questions you might have. They're a little bit more informal and will be more conversation based than the peer-to-peer workshops. And so the IC can't do this alone. We hire a number of summer orientation peer advisors who are continuing international students who will help ensure that you all have a smooth transition to life in both the United States and Ann Arbor. On the screen currently, you can see a picture from our peer advisors of our peer advisors from a few years ago. So they help us quite a bit. In addition to leading the peer-to-peer workshops that I mentioned above, our peer-to-peer advisors will be at a welcome desk right outside the International Center to any questions you might have about the University of Michigan, or they will direct you to a resource who can answer your questions. So this welcome desk will be available later in August. There will also in August, there will be a virtual welcome desk for those who want a quick question answered or who are unable to make the in-person welcome desk. So two different types of welcome desk to answer any burning questions you might have. And then lastly, our summer orientation peer advisors will be making blog posts and short videos that will give advice, recommendations, tips and tricks to incoming international students. And we've provided links to last year's blog posts and videos if you would like to check them out. They're really great. They're short. They cover things like where to buy, certain foods, like where certain cultural markets are around the area, recommendations for restaurants, for different types of music opportunities in the area. So based off their own interests, they have really short, quick, easy blog videos, things like that, that we definitely would like you to check out. So in addition to having some social events during the summer, we also hold a number of events during the school year. Last year, all of our programs and events were virtual, so we were really excited to have in-person events again during the school year. We're still trying to figure out exactly how that will look, but we really hope to see you at some of our many events that we'll hold throughout the year. I'll just highlight a few of those events on this list on the screen. One is our Lunch and Learn series, which is a series of sessions we hold about various relevant topics going on in the US currently. So in the past, we've had one on the US election in 2020. We had one on the Black Lives Matter movement. We had one about gender pronouns and how to use them. So things that might be more specific to American culture that we want our international students to, be aware of, because we're sure you have many questions about. So those are very, very practical for our international students. Another great event we have is our International Student Lunch Conversation, which is, we provide an opportunity for you all to talk to each other about life as an international student in the US. And we collaborate on that with our Counseling and Psychological Services office. We also have tax, immigration, and career-related workshops. So super practical workshops that all of our international students really want to know more about. So those are our really well-attended workshops. And then this was mentioned earlier, but I do want to stress this again, because although we primarily do work with international students at the International Center, we also provide education abroad advising for both our international and US students who are looking to study, intern, or do research outside of the US. So if that's something that you had in mind during your career at U of M, that's definitely an opportunity, and we're happy to help. And then during the academic year, you will receive weekly emails from us that include International Center events, as well as additional campus opportunities. So make sure you're paying attention to the emails you receive from us, because then you'll know about tons of opportunities that we offer and other offices on campus offer as well. Okay. So we know that was a lot, and you've been asking questions throughout this, so thank you. And we've been trying to answer as much as we can throughout the presentation, but now we have a dedicated time to really answer some of these questions you've been asking. Before we dive into the Q&A, I do want to ask that you please complete a session evaluation. In the top right corner of the screen, you see a QR code where you can scan and then evaluate the session, so we know how to improve this presentation in the future. We will also share a link of the evaluation as well if you prefer to take the evaluation that way. So with that said, we can get started with the Q&A. All right. And anyone else feel like Kelly and Caitlin, feel free to chime in as I scroll through some questions if there are any that you see that haven't been answered yet. So I see one that just came in. Is international orientation in August entirely online? So I would say it's mostly online. Our orientation related sessions that I mentioned earlier about like academic, health and wellness, like student legal services, things like that. Those sessions will be virtual. We will have some social events that will be in person. So we have like a kind of like a coffee hour or meet and greet plan for mid-August. We also are in the works of planning the Ann Arbor has something called, I think it's called Concerts on the Square, or it's no, Sonic Lunch it's called, where they're during lunchtime throughout August, there will be bands playing. So there'll be live music and lunch available outside, and we'll lead a trip to one of those concerts. So we have some more social events like that planned, but those practical workshops that I mentioned will be online and virtual.
So we have a question about international orientation on August 23rd and 24th. Wondering whether it's mandatory and where can they find more information. I'm assuming you might be referring to either the undergraduate international orientation or perhaps a specific orientation for your school or college. But the International Center, we're going to be having our international orientation throughout August, and our sessions, the ones that my colleague Jake was just talking about, are not mandatory, with the exception of the mandatory immigration check-in, which is mandatory.
When can you check into your college dorm once you get one? So I would ask housing that. Once again, housing@umich.edu. That will be your best resource for any housing related questions, since it's a completely separate office from the International Center.
Jake, I'll add to that if you have an on-campus housing contract, your move-in date and time will be listed on your housing contract, or especially for students living in the undergraduate residence halls, you may have a specific hour and date that you are given for your move-in time. So again, contact housing if you have questions about that, but you should be emailed that information from them. A couple of you have asked about the PowerPoint and the recording, so I will be emailing this to everybody who has attended. But we are also going to add the PowerPoint slides and the recording to the PDO website, probably early next week as well, to revisit. So you should get it emailed by Monday. As soon as it's available via Zoom, we'll get it to you.
I've seen several questions about the port of entry and what to carry, so I can speak to that real quick. When you are traveling to the US in F1 or J1 status, you may enter at any port of entry. So that can be anywhere inside the US. And there's actually a few US ports of entries at airports abroad. So for example, Ireland, you can actually go through US customs there. But you don't have to arrive in Detroit as your first US port of entry. It can be anywhere inside the US. To help make your admission as smooth as possible, make sure you have your immigration documents with you in your hand. So not in your backpack or in your carry-on luggage, but have them in your hand. And those documents are your passport, your visa, your I-20 or DS 2019. I suggest, in addition, you also carry your SEVIS I-901 fee payment receipt, evidence of admission to U of M or evidence of your course enrollment, and then also evidence of sufficient financial support. That can just help make your admission as smooth as possible. You may also want to have evidence that you are already enrolled in a course that meets in person or a hybrid course with in-person components. If the consular officer has any questions about your admission, they'll probably take you to secondary inspection just so they can have a more detailed conversation about it. But you can also request that they call our office. So if you do run into a very complicated situation, you can request that they call your designated school official, your DSO at the International Center. If you're traveling after hours, they can actually call the Department of Public Safety, and they can help work it out or transfer you to an on-call immigration advisor. It's highly unlikely that you will need that, but just know that if something does get very complicated or go wrong, we would be here to support you, and there's systems in place to help you with that.
There's been a few questions, well, a lot of questions regarding vaccine requirements and the submission of the university's vaccine form. There are some folks on the call who maybe have gotten one vaccine, but they haven't gotten the second dose, and they're wondering what they should do about the form. So it's my understanding that the form only allows you to submit once you have fully received, both doses. So if you've only received one dose, it's my understanding that you're not able to submit the form yet. But my colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong.
Caitlin, there's a request to, yeah, you see that? Yeah.
If you do end up in a difficult or sticky situation at the U.S. port of entry, you can ask the admissions officer, the Customs and Border Patrol officer, that they call your designated school official. So you could ask that they call the school, and we have systems in place to help you with that if that happens. I do just want to highlight, though, we have over 7,000 students on campus, and we maybe get 2 calls per semester. So it's extremely unlikely that you would be put in a situation where you did need that level of support. But if you did, there are systems in place to help, and just ask the CBP officer that they call your school.
So there's a question from YOLO saying, ONSP told me that I wouldn't be able to have online sessions with my academic advisor until August. So I believe that would mean making an online appointment with your virtual advisor. Just to confirm, will those sessions be available from August for everyone? I would reach out to your academic department to see what their policy is about making virtual appointments with your academic advisor and what time those open up, because it might vary by academic department.
I see there's another vaccine related question. I have a question about self-quarantine. I heard that you're allowed to enter campus buildings after 10 days from traveling abroad. Should I wait for 10 days after arrival to Michigan to visit campus offices, such as issuing an M card? Caitlin, is there a 10-day requirement? Or Kelly?
I don't understand the question.
I think they're wondering, like, if they arrive on campus and they're quarantining, does that mean that they're not allowed to visit a campus building for 10 days?
I believe so. I believe quarantine is quarantine, but that would be something to confirm directly on the campus maze and blueprint page, because there's several variables to consider. So you'd want to confirm that directly on the campus maze and blueprint page.
And I just put a link to that section of the campus maze and blueprint page in the chat. So there are different factors, whether you're living on-campus housing or off-campus housing, whether you have received an approved vaccination or not. And so it does include information about what you should do after arriving in the United States. And there is a recommendation to stay home for 7 days after travel. So take a look at that to see what is recommended. These guidelines are based on CDC recommendations.
Yep. I also added additional link that just provides general information about quarantine and isolation too. So hopefully between the 2 pages, you can figure that out. There's also, I think, a helpline on the Campus Maze and Blueprint. For a lot, there is a call center. Highly recommend reaching out to them or hitting the contact button on that Campus Maze and Blueprint, because they're going to be the experts on the policies and requirements around COVID-19 versus, say, like us, if it's really confusing. And again, if you're living on campus, contact housing, because for some people, if you're not fully vaccinated upon arrival, if you have 1 dose and not 2, or if you just maybe have questions about whether or not you might not have your vaccine accepted because it's not on the WHO approved list, always contact housing because they will work with people on a case-by-case basis for some of these issues.
Caitlin, I have a question for you. I got a direct message, but it might be applicable to multiple students, and it's about the mandatory check-in. So the student is wondering if they can complete the mandatory check-in from any location in the USA since it is an online check-in.
Great question. Yes, you can complete the immigration check-in from anywhere inside the US as long as you are holding F1 status. But be aware, to maintain your F1 status or your new J1 status, you would have to be on campus for the fall term, attending at least 1 class that's in person.
Thank you.
We have an immigration. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I just kind of want to point out it is 3:07, so we are almost 10 minutes over our time. So maybe this can be the last question, because we can try to address the ones that are remaining afterwards, or again, students can email icenter@umich.edu. So last question.
I have a quick question on behalf of maybe Canadian students that are joining us. A student asked if I'm Canadian, I don't need a visa, only an I-20. Well, I still need to check for the I-94 online.
Yes, so if you are a Canadian citizen, you do not need an F1 visa, but all other F1 and J1 regulations do pertain to you. If you are traveling to the US through a land border, they will give you a paper I-94. They may or may not also give you an electronic I-94. So the land border will come with a paper I-94. If you're a Canadian citizen traveling by air, they will definitely give you an electronic I-94.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today, as well as my fellow presenters for answering all these questions. Again, we will be emailing out the PowerPoint and the recording of today's PDO to everyone who registered and attended the event. So please keep an eye out for that. Additionally, we'll be adding it to the pre-departure orientation website soon, so that you can always find it a little bit easier than digging through your email. And Jake put it in the chat box already, but please email us at icenter@umich.edu if you have questions, and then that way we can address them afterwards. So